Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting round of the 125th edition of the US Open and Invitationals. I'm your host for tonight, once again, WGM Sabina Foisor. Very excited to be back here and bring you some of my favorite moments of the tournament. I wanted to take a moment first and thank the sponsor of the US Open and Invitational stream, and that is Precision Tune Auto Care. They've been in business for over 45 years and are making sure our cars run smoothly, same as hopefully this stream will be once I will get started with it. Um, and what else can I say? I've had the pleasure of being here with you for the past few days, and it certainly has been exciting. I want to take a moment and review round four, and um, I don't think I don't think we need too much introduction once I get started with that. But as always, if you have any particular games that you'd like me to go over, don't hesitate to let me know in the chat. And also, if even if it is for the US Open, particularly, I'm focused on the invitationals while they're still in progress. The last three rounds of the US Open, I'll be all eyes and ears on that tournament. But until then, if you see some interesting games, feel free to let me know, and I'll gladly take a look at it and bring you some of my thoughts. But without further ado, hi there, London. Without further ado, let's get into the recap of round four, which was definitely one of the most intense. And I think it's kind of interesting to see that the tournament that brought the most decisive results was actually the Irwin tournament of senior champions. This is you might think that once you get older you're not playing as much. Forget about that. Chess is not about age. Chess is about enjoying the game and playing the best you can. It doesn't matter how old you are. And in this round we had quite a few decisive games that I definitely want to go through, actually the entire thing, because I really thought it was they were very interesting. So for the first one, Grandmaster Alexander Fishbein was able to do it again. He won a beautiful game against International Master Alexander Matros, that putting him in a sole lead position with 4 out of 4. Grandmaster Fishbein has recently won the US Senior Championship, so he seems to be all in shape and ready to win yet another tournament. Let's see if he will be able to do it. But first, going into this round, he actually chose to go for the very aggressive bank home. White captured the pawn to a6, takes, and now the move e6. This is not one of the most popular lines for black. In fact, a lot of people like to play g6 here. Bishop takes a6 is the second most popular line, but it seems that g6, especially at top level, people like to play that move first, waiting a little bit to see what move white is going to play next, to see whether that pawn was going to be recaptured with the bishop or with the knight. But in this case, Grandmaster Fishbein decided to go for e6 instead. This idea immediately puts pressure on the pawn in the center and asks white a question as to what it is that they're going to do with it. Of course, knight c3 is the most natural response. He captured, knight took, and in this position, bishop takes a6. Obviously, if we recapture with the knight, queen takes, and even if white has taken the queen out early, we don't have a new knight to attack it, so white should be quite safe there, and an extra pawn, let's not forget that part. So after knight takes d5, he played bishop takes a6, bishop g5, trying to hold on to the knight a bit longer, bishop e7. Now black is threatening to trade the knight, so we have to trade, and in this position white played e3. A relatively natural response here to trade the bishops and try to find a fast way to development, although of course after king takes f1, it seems that white is behind a bit with the castling and everything, but you can castle by foot, of course. You just need to be mindful on how you're going to do it. There might have been some other approaches in this position, but I think white felt it was necessary to rush a bit because there's definitely a big delay for white's kingside development compared to black's. So after e3, castle h3, everything traded, white covers b2, and after black manages to castle, it is time for white to make up their mind how it is that they will place their king. Where exactly will they place it, how they develop this knight, and how they bring that rook super fast into the game. Well, in this case, white ended up going knight e2. I feel like knight f3 could have been an alternative, but then of course we might need to go king g1, h3, king h2, because obviously we cannot push the g pawn anymore. I do like the knight in f3 slightly more, but it certainly takes a bit longer, so we need to decide what it is that we want more. White chose the knight to e2, and black responded with d5. Oh, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Something's up with my board. Knight c6, queen takes d5. The big mistake in the game. So in this position, obviously, d5 is played. You see the pawn there, you want to take it, but you need to remind yourself, in chess, it's not all about material. King safety should be your #1 priority, and white has missed that opportunity to keep their king safe. I mean, there's no time to take the pawn. King f2 has to be played. Bring the rook fast into the game. Make sure b2, a2 are covered, and then maybe hide with the king to g1 if necessary. Queen takes d5 simply allows black to completely outplay white in this position, and it all goes down to initiative. Initiative and dynamic chess is something we want to be super mindful about, especially in open positions, especially in positions when someone's king is not safe. So here, black played the move rook f to d8, very strong move, bringing a new piece into the game. You don't really have many squares for the queen, so white decided to grab yet one more pawn, and now black doesn't even rush to recapture anything. Look at this position. White is at the moment 3 pawns up, but it doesn't matter. Look at this bar here, 1.5. Black is about to cruise through here unless you find the ultimate best moves, which is very hard unless you actually have an engine. Even the engine eventually does give black close to decisive advantage. So we're not in a rush to take anything besides, of course, there's no need to, because we need to bring our last pieces into the game. This rook is ready to come to d2, but before we bring it, let's bring in the knight. The knight coming to e5 is actually having ideas to be brought to d3, but also considers potential sacrifices in f3, which of course I love. White felt that knight d4 was going to keep his position safe, but that was just temporary. It was like a band-aid in the position, blocking the rook, covering f3, but that wasn't going to hold much longer. Why? Because white's king and the rook are still yet to be developed. Let's not forget about this one in a1 that doesn't help much. Maybe I should have made them red to really emphasize on the difficulty that white is dealing with right now. Rook 8 to c8, bringing the final piece into the game. This part of the game is simply brilliant. The queen moved away, and now it's time to figure out where and how exactly we're going to take advantage of this king being weak. So we want our queen to be able to infiltrate as it gets coordinated with the rook, which eventually will go to c2, but not yet because there's a knight there. So black played the move queen g6. This looks a bit towards g2, but also has the ability to bring the queen to d3. White responded with h4, potentially considering some retreat with the king there, but it didn't really hold up. Queen d3, king f2, and in this position, take a moment and try to find a brilliant move for black, after which we're approaching the end of the game. The brilliant moves: rook takes knight in d4. Double exclam indeed, because now it doesn't matter how you recapture, this rook comes into play and it's going to be mate on the board. Why recapture with a pawn? Rook c2 check. The king went to g3. Had white played king to g1, we could also go rook takes g2 check. King takes, queen takes f3 check. Oh, sorry, queen f3 first, queen e2 check, queen e2 check. If you go king g1, knight f3 checkmate. And if you happen to go somewhere on g3, now we go queen takes f3 check, king h2, knight g4 check, king g1, queen f2 checkmate. So a really beautiful finish here for black. Nothing that white can do to survive, and that story was written. So in this position, after e takes d4, rook c2 was played, and white responded with king g3, and now there's another beautiful mate in 4. Backwards move, queen g6 check. The king went to f4. If it went somewhere on the h file, of course, queen takes g2, and now knight d3. Every single piece of black's has helped in the creation of this mate, and there we have it. Queen e2 mate. So I was super amazed, super impressed with this. Definitely a very a nice initiative, dynamic game that Grandmaster Fishbein was able to outplay his opponent due to a capture of pawn. So whenever you want to capture material, be sure to take a moment and rethink things, and make sure that the opponent will not have ways to get back to you due to a weakness of your king. All right, going on to my next favorite game, and this was actually, I will only focus on towards the end of the game. This was a really tough fought game between international master Stuart Rachels, who had the black pieces, against Doug Eckert. And basically in this game, white seemed to have had the balance on and off, but it was around this moment where he probably was a bit, let's say, maybe nervous about the fact that b pawn was going to start pushing forward, and for some reason he didn't take it. He must have panicked of something. Probably it was no, sorry, not here. Oh, my bad, because here there was rook c8. What was the move I was thinking about? I forgot my move. I think it was knight. No, I forgot the move. There was the one that white should have played here. Maybe knight. No, king g3 maybe. No, still not yet. We need to move the bishop. Maybe bishop b7. Yeah, bishop b7. My bad. So bishop b7 was the move that white should have played here to get the bishop away from the attack, and then have the knight under attack, have the pawn under attack. After that, we can consider ideas with knight d2, knight d4, king g3 to grab this pawn, things of that nature, like someone likes to say. But bishop d7 was played, which actually allowed black to push the pawn forward, and now it's not so clear how things would go. White ended up playing knight d2, black brought in the king into the game, and it was in this exact position that white ended up playing the move rook to b3. After knight d1 check, things seem to still be going for a draw, because we have the bishop and the knight. We can sack one of the pieces, try to grab those two. But basically what happened here is, after knight 1 to e3, white took in c3, miscalculated, and ended up losing after knight takes, because black had this check and this check. Did not rush to take. This check is very important. because it switches the knight that's going to be given for the bishop. And even if white took this, black had sufficient time to bring his knight right back to g6 to stop the move h4. And now this king and pawn endgame that is going to be played basically, we forget that we have the knight. That knight just stays there to stop h4, but black's king is just simply advance and push white's king back, and then just, you know, win. Now, instead of knight takes c3 in this position, white had the ability to play the move knight a3. With knight a3, we're stopping that pawn push just one more move. Any capture of the bishop, of course, white recaptures, and then it's going to be easy. The knight will be given for that pawn. The king grabs those two. It's going to be a draw. So if knight b4 is played in order to win the piece in c2, we can simply capture h3. And once again, you know, capturing here and going c2 is not helping black win, because after this, we can simply go e4 or h4. I like e4, I think. e4, e5, trade the e pawn for the g pawn, and this is going to be a draw. So this was kind of a tough loss for Doug, who could have, like, he fought so hard, he could have saved it, but unfortunately for him, he didn't, and the game ended with him being defeated. Now the next game was brilliant from many standpoints. The next game was played between international master Timothy Taylor and Robbie Adamson. And as I said at the beginning of my review, this round was the round of the Irwin section, so I'm focusing a lot on this recap because I felt these games were really hard fought attacking games, initiative being a part of it, and I felt that it's something we definitely want to, you know, look up to. So in this specific game, we also had one of those very aggressive lines, and it was the 4 pawns against the Benoni, or well, King's Indian eventually transposed to a Benoni. So f4, 4 pawns. White went for the very aggressive line, and you know, there are many games that have been played here. I mean, you know, with both colors. I have been on the side of both the 4 pawns or the Benoni myself, and I gotta tell you, like, I enjoyed it when I was younger. I'm not sure I could be as sharp these days. I can definitely enjoy watching something or analyzing it, but probably not playing it myself. But don't count me out just yet. Queen c2, a6. So what are the plans here? Black is trying to get more space on the queen side, while white is going to try to play e5 and support a kingside attack. So, you know, both sides will try to find ways to stop the opponent from doing what it is that they want to do. So white started with a4 to stop b5. Queen c7 was played, and now knight d2. This is kind of a tricky move, very typical. The idea is we're keeping that pawn covered and we're bringing the knight towards c4, but also in some other situations we're opening up the bishop so that there's no knight g4, and sometimes bishop f3 is played to kind of protect this diagonal, so that whenever we push e5, we have that pawn covered. Rook b8, g4. And black played the very typical and good move here, c4. You cannot really wait much with black, especially in the 4 pawns attack, because these pawns are just marching forward. There's not so much that you can do. So after c4, g5, black plays knight h5. Now, that's the only place for the knight at this point. There's no other location, but it's certainly something you have to be aware of, because when we take in h5, pawn takes, we are messing up as black the king side. So white decided to go for a5, b5, en passant, knight takes, and in this position white took. So in this position, I was analyzing it, and I remember I was saying that I feel white wants some f5, f6, or queen d1, bringing in the queen to attack. But it seemed like it's not super easy to really find the best, really possible way for white. But probably queen d1 is one of those moves you want to make, but you need to be mindful about the diagonal. White supposedly has rushed a bit with the push of the move f5. By pushing the pawn, it allows some activity on the diagonal, but you can't really stop it that easily. I mean, yes, sure, you can go king h1 first, and then maybe queen d1. But okay, so there's not so much advantage for white, basically. But f5 was played, queen c5, king h1, and here we were analyzing, and I realized that the best move for black to maintain equality and stop the very menacing pawn f6 was the move bishop takes c3. Now, when you're playing the Benoni, you never, it's like your heart is being teared out of your chest, you know, playing this move bishop takes c3, because that's your defensive bishop, that's the strong piece, it's open and everything. You really don't want to give it up. But if you have no other choice, if that's your only option, you gotta do it. You gotta take that pawn, and then you need to find your way into white's weak king. So we're gonna go for knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, bishop b7 ideas, rook e2. Black gets sufficient compensation for giving up the piece and also the heart of the game. However, in the game, FIDE master Robbie Adamson did not go for that move. He ended up going bishop e5, which allowed white to play knight f3. It was not played, but that would have been white's best move, covering everything around the king, covering the center, and most importantly, blocking down the diagonal. So now bishop takes c3 will not really have as good as of an impact as it did earlier. Now, white did not play that. I played queen d1, and Robbie did go for bishop takes c3 at last. Pawn takes, knight takes d5, the correct move. And in this position after pawn takes, he did not go for queen takes d5, which would have maintained some kind of a balance and some kind of ideas for him. Instead, he felt he had to activate his rook, and he played the move rook e3. But guess what? This is a huge blunder already. Chess.com shows it to you. But why is that? Why is this move so bad? I mean, you're activating the rook, you're trying to bring a new piece into the attack, you will have, you know, ideas to take c3, rook d3. Well, because, listen, knight b3 indeed. Knight b3 discovered attack, fork, protection, d5, and now white is the one winning. And it's kind of funny. I need to show you this line so that you understand basically what is the big difference here. So after knight b3, pawn takes, we take, and white goes rook to e1. And now after rook e1, there's no good move for black to move the queen. There's no checks. The rook infiltrates to e8. The queen captures in h5. f6 is going to be made very, very soon. Now, luckily for Robbie, white did not play that. White ended up playing rook a5, which is still a pretty good move. Loses a bit of the advantage, but not as much. Rook b5 was played. And what's hilarious about this position is the fact that now knight b3 does not work anymore. Can you believe that? It does not work anymore, because after takes, bishop takes e3 check, queen takes, and after rook e1, there is one move, only one move, and it's brilliant in my mind, because, you know, I always love cute stuff and only moves and things that take me forever to figure out. But there's one move here for black that actually keeps the game alive. The move is queen to f4. And you're looking at the position and you're thinking, what do you mean, Sabina? Come on, I mean, how can the move hold? Don't you see there's rook e8? Yeah, sure, I see that. Yeah, I see it. And then what? Do you have a follow-up? Because right now, like, there's nothing. There's nothing going on. Because as soon as you move the rook, I will have checks, and I'll have perpetual checks. And there's nothing you can do. I also have this pawn, and really, no matter what white tries, it's not gonna hold. It's crazy that queen f4 is the move that saves black, but it does indeed. So, anyways, white found a much better move here. Captured, took in c4, But as the game progressed, now white has to find like only moves that would maintain actually the balance, and it's not easy to do because you have a lot of hanging pieces. You are up material, but this knight is kind of hanging, that pawn is weak, the king stays on the diagonal, so finding rook e1 I think is really difficult. Bring the king to f2 and try to stay safe. I mean, i I don't think this is an easy thing to find. So um white didn't find it. White ended up playing g6. And now look at that bar going down. White loses all of its advantage. Black finds this beautiful only move, rook takes e3. And now, like, even if you take the exchange, black maintains activity because the d5 pawn cannot be protected. And then the queen and bishop together are creating serious threats. G takes h7, king h8. White grabs the exchange, but now he has to find only one move in order to maintain equality. And funny thing, the only one move is queen e1 check. And then the idea is you actually give up that pawn so that you can come back to d1 and then get the chance to take h5 and bring the rook into play. I mean, this is not an easy thing to see. I don't think so. White ended up playing the move a rook to f3, and after this brilliant move of black's, there's nothing else to do, and the game turned around completely. Queen to e4. I love this move, keeping white's rook pinned, threatening bishop takes d5. White play king g1, but after bishop takes d5, you can't move the rook. And if you protect it, we're going to trade everything. The king and pawn endgame is lost. White gave one more check, and after king takes h7, resigned. So, I mean, it's a really hard fought game. Tactics matters, calculation matters. Having the power to be creative is very important, and this is the another reason why I really wanted to show this game as well. And I know I'm too much. I always show more than I should, but listen, it was just too beautiful not to show. And that takes me to my next favorite game of the round, because I had so many I couldn't decide. The next game still comes from the Irwin, and that was the game of Grandmaster Melik Hachan playing against Karl Hessler. And Melik has had kind of, I would say, a tough start because he drew 2 games and starting to be worried a little bit. I mean, I know him as being a very tactical, dynamic player. Of course, I know him more as a coach because I used to be a member of the Olympic team that he coached or was captain of. And so I know his style and what he was always trying to instill in me, some dynamic ideas, while I wanted more positional, of course. What can you expect? But, seeing him play this game made me realize he's still there. We still got Melik. He's still ready and sharp to play. So let's see how he was able to outplay his opponent from, of course, a position of, let's say, a bit of power, because he actually ended up having quite a bit of space. So to play this modern variation, Melik chose quite a classical and natural response to it, but he chose to castle long, which I like. So very classical kind of approach, 2 pawns in the center, development of the bishops, castling. In 8 moves, white has completed development, and this is usually what you want to see. But then it's not enough. You really need to find a way to outplay your opponent in the end. So here, after bishop b7, white played the move h5, and after h5, black responded with g5, of course. Knight h2. Nice prophylactic idea, getting ready for some break with f4, and black played f5. And I think this seems quite a natural response for black in the hippo or, modern. You can't sit and wait for too long because already the opponent has the center. If you don't attack it soon, they will kind of outplay you and restrict you more and more. And when the game was played, I actually suggested the move f3 to protect the pawn and meet f4 with bishop f2. But Melik had something better planned, and I loved his approach so much more than mine, and that was the move f4. Because now after f4, white puts more pressure on g5, is trying to open up the position, gives up the pawn, but who cares? We don't care about the pawn here. We care about opening up the king side. Black kind of needed to play g4, and well, Melik has shown his tactical skills here and played. What move do you guys think? Knight takes g4, of course. Come on, let's go for it. It's Black has developed a bit, but has some weaknesses. When we take, we get a chance to win e6 as well. And okay, finding only moves here is not so easy, I think. For Black in the game, Black played knight f6, which allowed the capture, and then Black went for another pawn. The entire theme of this round seemed to have been grabbing the wrong pawns while neglecting the development of the king, or better said, bringing the king to safety. And after knight e4, I loved Melik's approach. Trade first, of course. The knight came in with tempo, and when we're trying to keep the opponent's king in the center, we need to respond with tempo as well. And now d5, the move that I enjoy a lot because it keeps the bishop kind of restricted here in the center. It can't go back. It supports the bishop in e6, and now all he has to do is figure out how to take advantage of the king being in e8. Black playing knight f5. Obviously, we're not going to give up the bishop. We're preparing for g4, queen f6, trying to kind of find a shelter for the king in d8. But, and of course, a little trap there in case you think of playing g4. Oh no, mate, sorry. So you cannot do that, but that's okay. You can play c3, and now all we have to do is just move the rook, play g4, and the king is in the center. Black chose to hide on that side of the board, maybe going to d8 felt a bit scary with ideas of bishop h4 eventually, so after king f8, queen e2, gave up another pawn, but after rook takes d5, there's no way to stop rook f5, so other than retreating, of course, and now Melik brought one of his final pieces into the game, and after rook e8, Black basically trapped his own queen. Bishop h4, and that game was written. Brilliant game. I definitely enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Yeah, I feel like this round 4 was definitely the round of the Irwin. If I could choose a game from it, I don't know which one I would choose, because there's 3 really nice dynamic attacking games that normally you might expect. Okay, I'm not trying to be stereotypical here, but normally you might expect to see them maybe at a younger age, but I love to see these great players that US has still fighting and showing that they don't take easy draws. They are there to win it, and they are showing the youngsters how to continue fighting